Here we've got a young lady that we know and has been involved in Idaho politics for quite some time. And I know she mentioned a man that is her husband many times over the years. She was always very nice to me at Albertsons when I'd see her on Cherry Lane. And even though I look like a bum and I'm scruffy half the time, she always had a very, very nice welcoming to Idaho. And I can't believe I've been here this long. And of course, our great friend Mayor Tammy DeVere with her husband Jan with us as well. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you, Kevin, for having us.
I get a little emotional because that's why I'm looking away from you guys because, moving to a new place is so very difficult. And you always, whether we agreed or not, we always agreed on everything. You always were very warm and welcoming, and I really have to thank you for that hospitality.
Well, Kevin, I always loved your huge heart for certain charities and your big personality.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that. And, you are here to talk about something very important, obviously. If anybody has looked at the cover of Christian Living magazine, they know you two are on the cover, talking about how God helped you through a crisis. Also, you have a new book out, When We Could Not See the Moon, a true story of faith as told by the family of your daughter, Savannah. So before we get to that, a life in politics, a life in the public eye. Before we get to the book, how has it been? I know you guys have a winery, and I don't mean to cyber stalk you all the time, but you guys seem to have moved on from a life of running Meridian.
Well, we did. We followed our passion. We've always traveled the world by winery, Jim.
Yes, you always talk about your world travels, yeah.
Yes, so we started a storytelling business about wine. There's so many awesome stories behind the wine that as we find an exhilarating, exceptional wine, and then we find the story behind it, you really find that life in a glass, the purpose and the story and the passion behind that glass of wine that you're drinking and enjoying. And so that's what Jan and I are doing right now as we travel. We have a YouTube channel. It's called Spoken Wines.
Now, what's that like? I mean, we all are analog kids. So now you got your fancy YouTube channel, your storytelling. It's pretty intense, man. I can't even flip the liver here.
I was just really impressed how Tammy just switched onto that. And she is actually now our professional videographer. I think we should say professional videographer. Right. Yeah. And not only now with one camera, she said, no, Jan, we need two cameras. We need to have a different angle so we can switch back and forth. So she's right there with it. But we also have great help. Actually, both our girls are into it as well. One lives in Cape Town, South Africa, and the other in Amsterdam, so they're both engaged. But we have an art director in South Africa who's familiar with this territory, which we were not, not even close. And he's really guiding us through it and helping us to put really, these nice professional videos together. And yeah, you have to learn how to upload them from Dropbox into YouTube, and of course get the right thumbnail and the title and go with it. And it's been a lot of fun.
Actually, we have a little taste of what you do, because we take an hour interview and we have to narrow it down to 8 minutes of the story of what they told and be very concise. It has stretched us both, because this was not, storytelling was our forte, but certainly not the technology and the social media. But we've been enjoying doing this together and certainly having that opportunity to work with our kids.
It doesn't sound like retirement. I mean, you guys don't want to read a book and of course, you travel all the time.
No,
anyway.
Instead we write a book.
Yeah, you write a book as well. And before we get to this, because this is going to be some long segments, some emotional segments, your thoughts on your beloved city of Meridian that you served for so long. I mean, every time, let me just say this. Sorry to lead the witness, but I see all that development. That's you, man. I remember before there was 10 Mile, before all that stuff. I mean, you had a vision years ago to bring in people to Meridian.
It's been interesting to see from now an outsider perspective, but we put together a strong plan, and as long as that plan is followed, people know what to expect, and we've seen some pretty incredible things come our way.
Yeah.
I think we still have our challenges, and they're a focus of Mayor Simison and what his team is doing. But I love Meridian. I continue to love Meridian. And Kevin, I still enjoy going into Albertsons and seeing people, and oddly enough, people still recognize me, and my heart melts when they say, "We miss you," or "Hi, Mayor Tammy." That will always be in my blood.
Well, I mean, you can't beat the Cherry Lane Albertsons. I'm sorry. I love the Star one, but I mean, again, but that's what we talk about, not just the Albertson itself, but the community of Meridian, and really Idaho in general, where, people ask, how are you doing? And they really care.
Yes, that's very true. You don't just keep walking to answer. You stop and talk.
Yeah,
Yes.
indeed. Any other, I'm looking at your YouTube. Cows shape this vineyard, the oldest Shiraz vineyard in the world.
Yep.
I mean, I can't even pronounce this stuff. So this is great stuff here on YouTube.
Yeah, it's just really, really incredible. And getting together with those families that run those vineyards. And it always spoke very much to me. I grew up on a farm. And, I came out of agriculture. And that is basically what that is what I recognize here, because these families are so connected to the land. And they put so much money and effort and they're told into that vineyard to really get something to express through the grapes into a glass of wine that they feel that's their art, that expresses them. And then to hear those stories that how this particular family, bought this vineyard that was planted back in the early 1800s, planted by the settlers. They came in from northern Germany, Prussia somewhere, and now they get to take care of that and get these vines that are older than the American Civil War to basically speak into the wine. And that's why we have spoken wines, to tell those stories.
Okay, I'm going to show you my ignorance here real quick. Look, I saw Sideways. Does that do the wine industry justice? Paul Giamatti, and where they're going to Napa and all that, looking at the wines. You guys, have you seen Sideways at all?
No,
Oh my! It's all about wine and Chardonnay and life. You have to see Sideways. It's like 10 years, 15. Well, you guys are too busy working. I mean, I just sit there and watch things. I don't really have a life, but Sideways is a great wine movie.
Well, we'll have to watch it.
All right, much more coming up next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. True story of faith, guys. First of all, thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, it really is about our story and how our daughter was imprisoned, and our journey after finding out how it started to lay out through our faith, but also through the help of the community. So our daughter is an adventurer, and
Gee, where did she get that from? Both of you guys.
I wonder where, but she just really enjoys going out and experiencing new cultures. And during COVID, she came home because the business that she was working for closed their doors back in England, and she was recruited by a local company here in Meridian. And it was a supplement company, and she did some work with them and really fell in love with their product. But she really did not want to be behind a desk. Her adventurous spirit was getting restless, and so she started her own business. And one of her first destinations that she wanted to try this digital nomad life was in Egypt. So
and you might wonder, wow, Egypt of all places. And as a matter of fact, that went through our head as well when we heard her saying that. But when she was in London, her former boyfriend was originally from Egypt. And so she had been there a couple times and really liked it and really fell in love with the Red Sea. She's an avid scuba diver. And so she could really envision her being there. There is somewhat of an expat community there with people from all around the world. And she had, aspirations to work from there, to get engaged also locally there, to protect the reef, clean it up, and all of that. And so late 2020, when she had made up her mind that she would create her own business, which is all engaged, with web traffic, e-commerce, analytics, she said, hey, I can do that from anywhere as long as I have good Wi-Fi connection and a powerful MacBook. Right. And so early 2021, that's when the journey started. And but she never made it.
Now, we had a routine because she loved to travel. She got into a routine of letting us know when she arrived at the airport. She was getting ready. In fact, in this regard, she was getting ready for this new adventure, this new chapter. And we heard from her as she was departing to fly into Egypt. And usually we hear when she arrives. And there was no word. And we were going through our weekend. So Friday night we heard from her that she was starting this next chapter. And Saturday came and went. And Sunday morning we woke up and still no message. And Jan sent her a WhatsApp message and said, have you arrived safely? How are things going? We'd love to hear from you. And silence. And that was so unlike her. So when I got a message after midnight, late Sunday night, early Monday morning, it was not from our daughter Hannah. It was from her younger sister, who wrote, "Hey, Mom, give me a call when you wake up in the morning. I have an update on Hannah." Well, of course, we were a little bit anxious and wasn't sleeping well anyway, and so I didn't wait to call. I picked up the phone right then, and it was then we found out that as Hannah was going through customs, she was pulled aside. And she really thought that she was the lucky winner of that random search. But
this is in Egypt?
In Egypt. Okay. But she couldn't see what they were doing because they weren't doing it in front of her. You need to understand that she was prepared to travel for 12 to 18 months. And so she had a lot of supplements in her suitcase. And she was ultimately detained for up to 12 hours and then arrested as a suspected drug trafficker because of her capsules. And she also had a package of protein pancake powder mix that they also were suspicious of. So she was put in jail in the basement with only a fluorescent light, and I think that Jan has this description down because when I talk about it, I just want to weep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so after that really long interrogation, this is of course all that we heard afterwards. At that time, we just had nothing. We were waiting to hear from her. We didn't. Then, our youngest daughter texted her. But yes, she was thrown basically in this holding cell in the dungeon below ground level. No daylight came in. There was a light that was on 24/7, and it was pretty much a 12 by 12 foot holding cell, concrete floor, no bedding, no nothing. And she was held there anywhere with 10 to 20 other women. And yeah, most nights they had to negotiate and trade off some space on the floor to lay down to sleep. And that were the conditions. There was a hole in one corner where you could go to the bathroom, and there was a faucet for water, and that was basically it.
So here on KIDO Talk Radio, obviously we have our own criminal justice system. You two and your daughter and your family have got an education on the Egyptian justice system. And obviously the interrogation that we have here is very different from what they have over there.
Yeah, so the biggest difference of all here, I don't know exactly, they can only hold you for 2 or 3 days to build a case, and they have to prove that there's enough suspicion that you're guilty, because you're assumed innocent here. In those worlds, Egypt, a developing country, it's different. If you get arrested like that, you're assumed guilty. And then it's up to you to prove that you're not guilty. So it's totally around. And some of these women that I talked about that were in there, some of them had been there for months, and because nobody was fighting on their behalf. And they were just held there. And so that's where she was at. The reason that our youngest daughter had called was because just before they confiscated her phone, she texted him and said, "Hey, if you guys don't hear from me, it looks like they're going to arrest me for these capsules, and then call my parents if you don't hear from me in a couple of days." Well, our youngest and her friends who got that text from her, they first wanted to see if they could solve it themselves, and they still had connection with the former boyfriend. And bless his heart, the breakup and all that, they were apart. They had moved on. But he came back in at all cylinders and tried to help out. So he organized, an attorney locally there that he kind of knew off, and they got to go in. And these kids, they pulled all their savings together to pay the retainer fee. But after a couple days in, while we were still waiting for this call, they came to the conclusion this is not going to be solved quickly. And so that's when we got the call, and that's when our journey started.
And when we talk about this, obviously you all are Americans. Your daughter's in Egypt. Egypt is an ally. What goes on through your mind? I mean, obviously, we probably think that a phone call can fix this.
Well, first of all, they aren't allowed phone calls.
But I mean, a phone call from our people to their people would.
That's true. At that point, Kevin, we didn't know if she was hurt, where she was, even if she was alive, because no one had any contact with her since her phone was taken away and she was put into jail. So we just sat there and waited. We certainly as we were driving home from our cabin, we were up at the cabin when we found out. We were putting a plan together on who we needed to call and how to cast our net. But we also had to tap into our faith. I've been through some hard stuff with as a parent before, and I know where my source of strength is, and that lies in my faith. So as we were putting our plan together, we did reach out to our Idaho delegation, certainly Senator Risch's office. He had been the chair of the Foreign Senate Affairs Committee, so his office, his staff were incredible. But this is during a time of COVID where many people are still working out of their homes. It was a time politically of a presidential turnover, so U.S. ambassadors are not in place. And it was extremely difficult getting information. First, from the lack of connection and contact that you could have. They're not allowed a phone call. The only person they're allowed to speak to is their attorney on a very limited basis. So it was an unknown legal system. It was an unknown situation of really where she was and how we could have that kind of access.
Yeah, so it was like we were in 4 or 5 days, and we finally got official confirmation that she was held. The 5 days leading into that is there was no official word of where she was, how she was, and yes, you kind of think like, okay, this is all one big misunderstanding. Come on, a few calls and we get this solved. But as Tammy explained this, who do you make the calls to? This attorney that our kids had hired was still at that level of time very obscure. We couldn't even talk to him. Whatever message we got from him wasn't clear if he was actually in contact with her or not. And through the official channels like the embassy or the consulate, nothing, zero. We didn't hear anything. There was nothing coming back. And the fact that we ultimately heard was a friend of ours knew of a Navy SEAL who was active in the Middle East, and that person contacted the embassy of Morocco, where he had another friend work, and through that embassy, he heard the news that yes, the Egyptian consulate is aware of an American being held, and that was 5 days in, but that also kind of set the whole reason for this story, because as we went through this, as difficult as it was, as we were maybe felt we had finally a step forward and we dropped back two again, but it was amazing how people work together to wanting to do good. And Kevin, yes, we're people of faith, but faith is private to us, and we're all on our journey. But when we saw what was happening, how people were connecting, it was so clear to us that there was a greater force, a greater hand in connecting people, in opening doors that you would have never, ever heard of before. And as we were going through all of this crisis, and the faith, the trust and the clarity that we were getting back again by just giving it to God, giving it to a larger force to get that weight off your own shoulders, it opened up our mind. It gives you a fresh perspective. It gives you hope, and also ears and a heart to then really listen to what you should be doing. And we said, you know what? We don't know what outcome we will get in this story, but we got to share this with people that find themselves in similar situations.
We'll have more next. When we could not see the moon, our daughter locked away in a foreign jail. A true story of faith. More coming up next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Faith. Our daughter locked away in a foreign jail. Jan and Tammy DeVere joining us. Thank you guys for being here. And, it's not an easy story. Your daughter imprisoned by the Egyptian government. But before we get to this, and how difficult was it to relive this experience and to write it down and to put it out? It's one thing to speak, but it's one thing to go over this and then to edit it and everything else. That had to be for lack of a better term, a grueling process. Or was it therapeutical?
It was probably a little bit of both, Kevin. We wrote through a ghostwriter. So we turned over our 180-page Google Doc because we had a lot of information. And also our daughter journaled. And while our daughter is still very traumatized by this and working through it, she she gave the journal to the writer and spoke with them several times. But outside of that, that was her involvement in the book. We have not read the journal still today. We got exactly what the reader did. When the writer would turn us over a chapter, and the chapters are from, we are using other names, so I'm Tracy and Jan is John. But when we would get our chapters for the day, she writes it from our perspective and then from the journal entry and what was going on at that time. So we saw Hannah's journal every chapter, one chapter at a time. And so it was reliving it. This is a heart project. Yeah. So it hurt the heart every time I would get a new chapter, and we would see how what she was doing paralleled with what we were doing.
And when we last left, you had been told that your daughter had been imprisoned. You had talked to folks. You had the Navy SEAL with the Moroccan consulate, the embassy. Your daughter is being held. It's at the time of COVID. And where do we go from here? So we have an attorney, very different legal system than here.
Yeah, so very difficult to communicate with the attorney. And then all of a sudden we got this note, this picture of this little note scribbled on the back of a brown paper bag. And it said something along the line of, "Mom, Dad, please don't worry about me. God is telling me that you're doing everything you can to get me out of here. I finally discovered the power of prayer." Something along that line it said. And now you have to realize this is our daughter talking. We haven't heard her. She's spiritual, but not in that sense. You haven't heard her talk like that probably since Sunday school when she was a little kid. So it was very clear that in that condition where she was in, where everything is stripped away, she just had this strong connection to God. And to us, it felt we could communicate with her in that way. And again, that when that guidance that took us there, that solace that we got into that, we felt we had to share. So it started with that. We finally had a kind of a Zoom type call with the attorney because we had all kinds of issues there. As a matter of fact, the ex-boyfriend who had found him, he at one time was really starting to wonder, if this was the right direction to go or not. So you had to still figure all that out. And in the meantime, it was just a big brick wall. We could not communicate with the consulate. Zero response back. Initially, it was very difficult to get other support as well because of procedural things that you have to read the book what we had to run into, because some of it you shake your head. How can that even be possible? But ultimately, our first plan was basically this. Hey, it should be simple. These are supplements. Test them. Get the report. Please get her out of there. And yeah, okay, we work on that. That would be anywhere from 30 to 40 to possibly 60 days before the lab report would come back. And we said, and that means she's held in jail. So we did everything we could with our connections and their connections and connections. I mean, multiple ways around the world. People of all kinds of different faith kicked into this to see what they could do to hurry up, to put pressure on the system there to get that lab report back much quicker. Because in the meantime, apparently what they have there, when they hold people, they have a hearing every 10 or 14 days. And at that hearing, you can bring new evidence forward to show that you're innocent. Because remember, you're there because they already assume you're guilty. And so when that next date was known, we did everything we could to get that report done. But in the meantime, we also worked on Plan B.
Yeah, so plan A was get the lab results back and put as much pressure as you could to get a quick testing result. And we're navigating in a system that we don't understand and politically unsure.
Sure.
They don't want too much emphasis or making it a profile case. So that makes people really leery of putting pressure and those kind of things. But we're focused on that one date. And unfortunately, as you'll read in the book, we got the date wrong. We had the date one day later after the court hearing. So, and actually the lab results came on that day, but it was not quick enough for the court date. Plan B, we always liked the backup plan, and we were working with the attorney convincing him that we need Plan B. And Plan B was working with our officials in Idaho and showing that the ingredients in those supplements are legal. So the supplement company, oh my gosh, they dropped everything and they just went to work. So we had an ingredient list. At that time, the Attorney General, Lawrence Wasden, had just gotten out of surgery, was just coming home when he noticed my Facebook message to him. Mm-hmm. And he called and he said, "What do you need? What can I do?" I just got back from the hospital. I was just totally floored. This is Idaho.
Right.
This is the people of Idaho. And oh my gosh, he engaged his office. We worked with the State Department of Pharmacy. They wrote a letter supporting the ingredients of those supplements, and we got a letter from the Attorney General's office, and we handed over this great document that one of the things we haven't mentioned is this arrest showed up in a local tabloid. And that was a godsend. Outside of our horror that this was out there and it was being sensationalized by a very unread tabloid, but there was a picture. And I was able to use that picture to identify what the supplements were by the capsule, by the picture that the supplement company gave us. And then we could then put together this document of what was in those bags and what those ingredients were, just in the case that the lab got hung up on an unknown ingredient. We wanted to have this to support it so we could get those lab results back. But the judge found this Plan B document, and he determined, even though he didn't have the lab results back yet, this person should not be in prison.
Yeah, so he set bail.
Oh, she wasn't going to get free. It was bail.
It was bail, not free, to let out on bail. And that was, of course, a big problem. In the meantime, when that hearing was there, our youngest daughter had flown over there because that would be the first person that then our oldest daughter could actually see in person, because that was a time that they possibly could meet. And she went there, and then the judge said she can be released on bail. And then our youngest girl had to basically empty out almost every single ATM machine in that city to raise the cash to get her out.
Within a certain amount of time.
And we're not really talking about New York. We're talking about Egypt.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
When We Could Not See the Moon is the book. Coming up, and we want to give you as much time as possible, we're going to ask, if you guys went to Egypt, and much, much more. Again, you need to check out this book, When We Could Not See the Moon, A True Story of Faith. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM and 580 AM. You on? I don't want to call it an adventure, but obviously when we last left, your daughter is in Egypt. Your other daughter is about ready to get out on bail. You're emptying the ATM machines. Now, Tammy and Jan, my question to both of you is, were you guys going to go to Egypt?
We were advised by the attorney not to. Having our youngest daughter there was one thing, but putting too much attention on our daughter that was in jail, he highly advised us not to go. We would be too much of a distraction, and it could work as a detriment instead of a support. And really, he said, at that point, the likelihood of being able to even see her was highly unlikely. So we did what we could, working through Senator Risch's office, working through some of our other contacts, and doing what we could here in Idaho. And even then, we had to get out. We had to turn off the distractions here too. So we really did need to focus on what we were doing in this regard.
Yeah, we really asked ourselves, where can we be more effective? I mean, first of all, it was impossible to fly out there on short notice because of COVID situation. There were no flights. And secondly, with our network, as we've now talked about, where are we going to be more effective? And there would have been no way we could put Plan B even together if we were in some country where you don't have access to anything. And I just couldn't help, think of, okay, you're in front of some police station or some jail, but what are you going to do there? And again, our attorney had advice to don't make it public because then people dig in.
Indeed. So where do we go from here? Did she get out on bail?
She was at her court date. The judge said she should be released on bail, but she was never released. And that was probably the beginning of the most difficult time for her, because as she was in jail, she was really focused on, I know that first court date, I'll be out. They'll see that there's a misunderstanding. And as she's in there, she's feeling a lot of guilt because she sees her privilege. She sees a lot of women that don't have the support system that she has. And she felt really, she felt that deeply. But I think that after that, she was told by her attorney that she was released on bail, and that it would just be a day or two to really process all of it. And each day came and went, and she's still sitting there.
Yeah, and nothing happened, and basically that was only half in at that time because it was hard. She didn't understand what was happening, and from our side, it was very hard too because this was at that time that our attorney didn't know anymore either. He said she should be set free on bail, and it wasn't.
436-580-KIDO. We're joined now by our great friend, Congressman Fulcher. Congressman, how are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Thank you.
I thought of you over the weekend, and you're going to go, oh, Kevin Miller, this is Kevin tries to pull the old Bob Novak gotcha questions. But I thought of you over the weekend as I was watching one of the Sunday shows, and this is Tulsi Gabbard. If you don't mind, I'm just going to play a clip for you because I think you can relate to this if you don't mind.
Issues related to freedom of speech. She says she stands for freedom of speech, and yet, as we've seen time and time again, her and Joe Biden have taken actions both directly and indirectly to censor free speech. Most recently, I can point to my own experience of this, of how the Harris-Biden administration have added me to a secret domestic terror watch list the very day after Kamala Harris was endorsed by Joe Biden. And I was on TV and warning the American people about what I saw as the dangers of a Kamala Harris presidency, taking action that was clearly political retaliation. They've done this to a lot of different people, which points to how dangerous it is to have people in power so willing to abuse that power to go after political.
So there we have former Congresswoman, a veteran, a former Democratic presidential candidate. And when I heard that clip on CNN State of the Union, by her interviewing by Dana Bash, I thought of you and that they have looked at your phone. They have done all sorts of things. How big an issue is this deep state terror watch list, the double secret probation list, sir?
Well, I agree with former Congresswoman Gabbard entirely, and she is one of many examples of exactly that. And I had discussions with former Speaker McCarthy on this, and have had examples of other members where they have had their phones taken or surveilled. Excuse me. I strongly believe that I'm one of those. And when I confronted the administration over that, they would not say no. And so I'm relatively sure in my mind that I was one of those that was caught up in all of that. You've got members like Scott Perry out of Pennsylvania, who was accosted in front of his own home and his phone removed, and so far nothing has come out of that. I mean, the examples of this have been very stark, to the point where we've actually had legal training sessions with my staff in the event that an agency or anyone from the executive branch comes to the office or attempts to demand information, exactly what the appropriate action should be. And you shouldn't have to do that. There is this thing called separation of powers. There's the executive branch, we're the legislative branch. But that doesn't seem to matter, Kevin. When you weaponize a system, when you weaponize the intelligence community, which I believe this administration has done, Tulsi Gabbard is an example, I believe I am an example, then that tells you what this administration is all about. And they are very interested in the use of power in order to maintain control. And that's a scary thing. And that's something that we should not have to contend with in the United States of America, this third world style of abuse, third world style of using the system in order to maintain power and disadvantage your opponents. But that's exactly what they do.
You know, again, I immediately thought of you when I was watching the tapes over the weekend, and you warned us about this, and it seems, we've had this endless cycle from the pandemic on where it's just one shocker after another. And I can remember you being very descriptive, and, you worried about people coming after you. And, we take a look at as lifelong Americans, our civil liberties are something that we're born with, and they seem to be in jeopardy from this administration.
Yeah, I think that it's absolutely gotten worse. This is the 6th year that I've served in Congress, and in that window of time, the measures that have been taken against members, and frankly the security provisions that have had to been put in place. I mean, reluctantly by some, in order to try to prevent that. The steps that we've had to take. Kevin, I've never had to worry about security provisions and steps that I take once I'm in Idaho. I've never had to worry about that. But yet, the system has made it so that may not be the case in the future, and it's a sad turn of events when that takes place. But the members of Congress are less secure, and that's to a large extent because the administration has weaponized the system against them. And I'm not saying that there's everyone in Congress is squeaky clean and doesn't need to be held accountable from time to time. What I am saying is in conjunction with what former Congresswoman Gabbard said, the system is definitely weaponized, and those of us who are current members of Congress of the conservative vein in particular are targets for our political opponents currently established in the White House.
Our great friend Congressman Fulcher joining us here. Kevin Mill in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Congressman, you get a chance to look across the country at the races. Obviously, people are talking about the top of the ticket, but let me get your insight. You talked to Jim Jordan. You're in the planning sessions. You travel across the country helping out conservatives and Republicans all over the country in close battleground races. How do you see the fight for the House and then the Senate, please?
I have to tell you that I'm optimistic. I really am, and I'm not just saying that. We try to measure the swing districts in particular, and right now, assuming that there's reasonable election security and assuming that we get the turnout that we think we're going to get, we feel very, very good about what's going to happen with the House majority. That should increase. Intel looks to me like somewhere between 5 and 10 seats, which is not a lot, but that's a lot bigger than what we have right now. And I think that's a conservative estimate, but we will see. That's what the objective numbers appear to show. It appears like we've got a good chance, better than 50%, of a very small positive majority for conservatives in the Senate. And so I feel optimistic about that. Regarding the presidency, Kevin, if he stays alive, and I don't say that sarcastically, I mean that sincerely, if President Trump stays alive, I think he has got the best chance of winning the presidency again, too. But he is not out of danger. This weaponization of thing, he's the poster child for that. How many lawsuits has he been through? Attempt on his life, at least one, and all of this other these other attacks. Tulsi Gabbard's one thing. I'm another thing, but what's happened to former President Trump is unmatched for anyone.
Indeed, our great friend Congressman Fulcher joining us. Congressman, Labor Day's over. By the way, I love the video. You did one where you had this incredible backdrop, a beautiful backdrop of course, our state of Idaho. So you've gotten recharged. You're ready to go. Obviously, I guess the big issue would be the continuing resolution to fund the government.
That's going to be next. You're exactly right. And what is going on is typically Congress is supposed to have 12 appropriation bills to fund government completed by the end of September. We were actually on track to do that before the disruption in the House over the McCarthy speakership kind of put a wrench in all of that. And so we're not going to get all 12 of those bills passed. I think we've got 4 of them passed so far. We'll work on some more before the end of the month. Excuse me. But this is going to boil down to a continuing resolution, which is a stopgap measure to fund the government. And my understanding of what's on the table there is a resolution that would fund the government through March. And the reason for that is to hopefully stop shenanigans by a lame dunk presidency, assuming there's going to be one, and have those dollars set so there can't be craziness between now and March. But the key there is that continuing resolution will also include what's called the SAVE Act, Kevin. The SAVE Act is a piece of legislation that says only citizens can vote. Now that's where this is going to get real dicey, because believe it or not, my friends on the other side of the aisle don't want to see that. So then think about that just for a minute. If you are not willing to support a piece of legislation that says only citizens can vote, where is your head on the whole border situation? If there was ever any validation about whether or not the border is a strategy, the open border is a strategy, this is playing out right now, because we're going to have a big floor fight. And my understanding is my friends on the other side of the aisle are pretty much lining up in unison to say they will not support this if it says non-citizens can't vote. So that's going to be the battle. I might add one last thing on this is every single appropriation that the House has sent to the Senate, Chuck Schumer has refused to hear. And so there's another reason why there needs to be a changeover in leadership on the Senate side.
Well, it's so crucial. And could you imagine it will take a Republican House and a Republican Senate, along with President Trump, to really begin to get a handle on the deep state and really, not to be cliche here on KIDO Talk Radio, but make America great again, especially something that you're a massive part of, and that's energy and natural resources. You know, we're all of a sudden we're anti-fracking, but we're fracking. And, you know, I know you're very concerned about the cost of energy, whether it's election time or whether it's, you know, post-Labor Day time.
That's exactly right. And we've been very blessed in the state of Idaho, but what's going on nationally is we've got to pay attention to, Kevin. And if I may segue just a little bit here, I was able to tour some of the fire sites that we had in the northern part of the state here over the last week. And my goodness, the Wapiti fire took out 92,000 acres. The Gwen fire, 29,000. Flat fire, 4,000. And what they call the Texas fire up around Kendrick, Julietta. You know, this is nothing new for the state of Idaho. We have we typically have hundreds of thousands of acres burn up, but I wanted to bring that up, and I apologize about the segue there. I wanted to bring that up because just to put back in front of people that it doesn't have to be that way. This is mostly on federal land. If we properly manage that, then it's a revenue generating, very healthy, environmentally friendly process. If we don't, then it burns up. We get the smoke we've had in recent days. We get the horrendous negative impact on wildlife and the environment. And then we spend hundreds of millions of dollars to try to suppress it. And so huge issue continues to be for Idaho. And we've got to make that better.
Well, and again, it's starting to look like Beijing around here. And you know, the fires continue, and yet the federal government really doesn't do much to help us. Oh,
it's, you know, we are, generally speaking, from a management standpoint, we are tenants in the state of Idaho. 63% of the land is federal. And this is a bigger and bigger fight for me and the rest of our delegation every year is to communicate to members across the nation. Here's the situation in Idaho and a few other western states that nobody else has to deal with in the way that we do in terms of managing the land under our own feet. And here's some of the ramifications and why the Midwest and the East needs to send money to the West to fight fires and to offset, PILT dollars and payment of taxes dollars and that type of thing. So anyway, it's a bigger and bigger issue. This is going to be coming to a head sooner rather than later.
Our great friend, Congressman Russ Fulcher, joining us. Kevin Mill in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Obviously, we woke up Sunday morning to 6 more hostages killed by Hamas, execution style, before the IDF could get to them. And yet we still have the waffling of the Democratic Party, the waffling of the vice president, the waffling of the president. As someone who has staunchly supported Israel from the very beginning, your reaction to this, sir?
I hope the voting American public are paying attention on who is standing where on this issue, Kevin. Historically, when I say historically, during my lifetime, the Jewish community, generally speaking, has leaned more towards the Democrat side than the Republican side. But who's standing with them? Who has stood with them with these attacks on Israel from the get-go? It's been the Republicans. I think you're going to see a shift in that demographic as a function of this, and rightfully so. And, the best thing that comes out of this, when I say best, I'm being tongue-in-cheek, the best thing that comes out of our current administration on this whole issue is we want a ceasefire. We want see the end of the fighting. Well, of course, we want to see the end of the fighting, but what about the cause of it? What about the root of it? And who are we going to put our alliance with? And so, these aren't just Israeli hostages. These are American hostages, and we have a responsibility to put a stake in the ground and say, no, this is unacceptable. And anybody that generates terror like that, takes life, we're going to shut this down. We're going to end it. And so I just hope the American voting public is paying attention to where the sides land on this issue.
Congressman Fulcher joining us, Kevin Mill in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. And here we have Ukraine. Now, you talk about, and you've been to Ukraine, you've detailed what you thought of the folks there. Here we have Ukraine, all of a sudden, the war has swung another way where they're capturing massive amounts of Russian territory. They want to go on the offensive. And now, who knows what Putin's going to do? And never mind, I see them not succeeding on the other areas where Russia has taken the lands, I guess the Crimea and the other one. But Congressman Fulcher, your thoughts on Ukraine and where we go from here? Obviously, we don't want Putin to elevate this war, but just when you thought it was over, another twist.
Yeah, and when I look at this whole situation, you can't help but reflect back to say, what if? What if we wouldn't have had a change in the administration? And I think the answer there would have been there would be no war in Ukraine right now. There wasn't under President Trump, under different leadership, under strong American foreign presence, and there is as soon as that changed. And so I think that's the first and foremost lesson. Can America have an impact? Absolutely. And it's without firing a bullet, or for that matter, without sending bullets to be fired. That's the first and foremost thing. As is well known, I haven't supported the beyond the first major push on the funding to Ukraine for this war. I haven't supported that, and that's been not because I don't want to see Ukraine prevail. It's that we don't have a plan for success there. We don't have a plan. What does it mean to win there? Of course, nobody wants to see Putin get the old Soviet band back together, but we need to have a plan, and we don't have that. We need to have the resources, and quite frankly, we don't have that. We have sent dangerous levels of our own stockpiles for this effort, and we've sent dollars that have been unaccountable into let's face it, a relatively corrupt system in and of itself. And so I just don't want to see America as the face of this, American lives put at risk, and America's stockpile depleted to the point where we are unsafe ourselves. And that's where we're at with this. And that's not to say that there can't be a happy ending that comes out of it. But this is all a function of poor leadership in the first place. And, there's you don't see this administration out there defining and leading on how to wind things down. It's almost as if some of them want to see this continue for one reason or another. And I think that's just bad leadership.
Congressman Russ Fulcher joining us, Kevin Mill in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Congressman, anything else that you would like to share with us here in Idaho?
Well, you touched on what's going to be in front of Congress here for the next month. And this is going to be the fight over the continuing resolution. And it will be whether or not that SAVE Act is included in this language, Kevin. And I just, we have a constitutional provision that says you've got to be a citizen to vote in this country. And then the legislation, and that's been deviated from, and the legislation that is going to be put forward will require that. And we've already seen states and the District of Columbia try to deviate from that, have non-citizens on the voting rolls. That's very dangerous and inappropriate, and it plays right into the current liberal strategy of changing the social fabric of America. So prayers and support that we can have that SAVE Act included in the budgetary measures moving forward. Only citizens should be voting in the United States of America.
No, that is common sense. It's sacred. And the fact that the Democrats want to do that is just another example of how out of touch they are in the world. And now you're back in the pretend world east of the Great River where the Democrats are relevant. I know you really enjoy being in Idaho where it's as it should be. The Democrats are irrelevant, sir.
Well, that is true, and just we can't ever take for granted just how blessed we are in Idaho. But we're also not immune from some of this stuff that's happening around the rest of the country. And so, I want to thank you. I want to give you a compliments on just how you have this forum where people can talk about this kind of thing. And bring things up that, you know what, probably wouldn't come up any other way. And you've provided a forum for that, not just not just for friendlies, but for everybody to pipe in on this. And so compliments to you. Thank you for the opportunity and for what you do, Kevin.
Congressman Fulcher, we'll try to live up to that. I know you do, and you have a great day, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Our great friend, Congressman Fulcher. We'll get your reaction next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. 580 KIDO. Do appreciate Congressman Fulcher joining us. An action-packed day here on the program. Of course, time for your phone calls as well. But you go back to what Tulsi Gabbard said, where she just outed it, and Congressman Fulcher said it as well, that you have an administration that is using the intelligence networks against us. And we're not talking about crazy Alex Jones. We're not talking about Glenn Beck. Sometimes he's right, sometimes he's wrong. We're talking about Tulsi Gabbard. We're talking about Congressman Fulcher, people that are in the arena. And how can you justify that? Remember the old days, the quaint days of the FISA warrant? Remember the old days of the Patriot Act? I think Butch Otter, when he was a congressman, warned of things like this. And we're seeing this now. I can remember under Obama where the Wetumpka, and it took me years to pronounce this correctly, the Wetumpka Tea Party, they were in fact targeted. And remember during the Clinton administration, where if you were conservative, and Sean Hannity likes to talk about this enough, and Glenn Beck as well, that you were audited. And you were never audited before, but you were because you were conservative. So essentially what we're seeing is the power of the media, the power of the government, the power of the incumbency used to quell dissent. That's why it's so important to have a voice, to be heard. And, of course, that's why we're here for you. Kevin Miller in the morning. Don't forget our friends at Beacon Plumbing. They say stop freaking, call Beacon today. I don't really know. I think we've done such a great job on today's show. We might just have to peace out for the rest of the week. I don't believe we're going to be able to match the content, the intensity that we have today, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But you never know. Of course, getting ready for the big debate between Harris and Trump. The world awaits. Donald Trump on the road. And, here you have Congressman Fulcher talking about the Democrats want to let non-citizens vote, which is total hogwash, total BS. Did you ever think that you would live in a country where that would happen? Right? Crazy. Indeed. Awkward pause there as we're looking for something to load. We'll get to that in a minute. Phone number's here, 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Let's try this one more time. Hope springs eternal here.
About the American dream. They never mention it. They don't talk about the American flag. By the way, the American flag, we got some of the greatest congressmen warriors here that you have anywhere. And congressmen, go to Congress soon, like immediately, but soon. We should give
here you go.
A 1-year sentence in jail to anybody that burns the American flag. You should do that. Mike, do it, Mike. Right? Do it.
Now, many people in the media are going to say, you can't do this. But what type of America do you want to live in? Kevin, we need to have the freedom to burn the American flag. That may be good for y'all in California, may be good for y'all in New York, maybe in Arizona, but not so much in Idaho. Especially, north of the whatever line. Is there like an official line that divides the state between the liberals in the South and the conservatives in the North? You talk to the folks from North Idaho, that's all they say is how conservative they are. Great. I wish we were that conservative down here. However, I think that we can hang with anybody in the country. But here you have the America under Donald Trump, and then you have this.
You better thank a union member for the 5-day work week. You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time.
There we have it already. The Commissioner, Kent Goldthorpe, he calls himself chopped liver. Well, we're going to see if Kent can really match the intensity of today. Like I said, this is the day to be listening to this program. If you missed it, you can go on the podcast, Congressman Fulcher. But really, what type of America would you want? This one.
You better thank a union member.
You better. I like that. You better.
You better thank a union member for the 5-day work week. You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time.
Why do they say those stupid things? By the way, look, I'm not a flag burner, so I would be okay with this.
Talk about the American dream. They never mention it. They don't talk about the American flag. By the way, the American flag, we got some of the greatest congressmen warriors here that you have anywhere. And congressmen, go to Congress soon, like immediately, but soon. We should give a 1-year sentence in jail to anybody that burns the American flag.
Crowd goes crazy in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Kind of like Allentown. Remember that Billy Joel song? If not, look it up.
Mike, do it, Mike.
Do it, Mike. All right, Mike, get to it. Chop, chop.
That looks so bad at the Democrat National. I always call it Democrat. You know, they want it to be called Democratic. I said, then change your name. They don't change their name. Sounds worse, so I use it. But at the Democrat National Convention, I watched those American flags burning all over the place. I think it's a disgrace. And they said it's unconstitutional to stop it. Like hell it is, okay? It's not unconstitutional.
Yeah, doesn't it just want to bring you back to the good old days where Donald Trump would go on X or Twitter or anywhere else and just tell it like it is? Could you imagine, I mean, once again, another Trump presidency? What it would mean for the liberals? They would go crazy over this. By the way, the fallout over the Arlington situation continues to resonate. We have Spencer Cox, who wants to be the governor of Utah one more time, whose role model is Brad Little. And apparently he was at Arlington with the president, and he apologized for being at Arlington. He apologized for being there and said it was inappropriate. However, do you go by the media's narrative, or do you go by the Trump campaign's narrative, or do you go by Senator Cotton's narrative and other people that have been there? So, by the way, Utah is not part of our jurisdiction, but there's an incredible election going on there because you have, does this sound familiar, conservatives that want a more conservative form of government than the current Cox administration. So here we have Spencer Cox now saying, my bad, my bad. We'll have more on that in a minute. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Look, I'm in favor of, what President Trump talked about. You burn the flag, you go to jail. Of course, we would need to build more jails, but I believe that would stop a lot of people from burning the American flag. To me, a great insult, a huge insult to our great American heritage and for all those people that have fought for that flag, fought for this country. Coming up next, Joe Biden is in Pittsburgh. Does it really matter? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. We will talk a little bit about what's going on in Pittsburgh, but on another note, I know a lot of people are talking about Boise State football, and we wish them well over the weekend, though. And it's just kind of funny to watch some of the local folks in the media get defensive about people being critical of the team. And just like with the Democrats, it's as if they're part of the team. No, the media's job is to be objective. And, you know, you got a big game this week, unfortunately. And this is how money corrupts. And you're going to go, Kevin Miller, I've got an RV. Kevin Miller, I'm retired. Kevin Miller, I've got this, I've got that. And look, if you've done well, I am so happy for you. On the other hand, you take a look at how money has corrupted college football. At one time, people could afford to go to games. I think you can still go to, like, the College of Idaho. They provide a very good product. But Boise State, you know, they've got to keep up with the Joneses. The people played for the team and played for the sport and everything else. And yet today it's all about the money, sadly. And, you know, we proudly are distracted by this. We proudly move on, but just an opine to the good old glory days. Kind of like in the days when Joe Biden was the president of the United States. What's that? He still is the president of the United States? I didn't know that because the last time I saw Joe, he was on a beach having a good time. And by the way, if I'm the vice president, if I'm Kamala, do I really want to be seen with Joe?
I know she'll be a good president. I've watched her when all the experts, foreign and domestic policy, would give us advice. Then we'd sit alone in a room. And she has a backbone like a ramrod.
She has a backbone like a ramrod.
You better thank a union member for the 5-day work week. You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time.
Yeah, sure. This ain't 76, lady. Anyway, back to Joe Biden, who is in Pittsburgh trying to be relevant. Pittsburgh, one of the only places in the world that loves Joe Biden.
She has the moral compass of a saint. This woman knows what she's doing. Folks, I promise you, if you elect Kamala Harris as president, it'll be the best decision you will have ever made.
The best is the
Kamala believes as I do. The unions are the spine of this economy. She'll be historic.
Yeah, the unions are going to be wiped out by AI and Skynet and everything else, unfortunately.
You better thank a union member for the 5-day work week. You better thank a union member for sick leave.
Okay, I apologize for that. It's just too much. Thankfully, we have Tyler Traffic to cleanse the palate of sweet Camilla or bitter Camilla or Camilla.
I can remember, and this was one, Republicans came up to me in one of my campaigns, and they said, Tim is in the pocket of organized labor. I said, that's a damn lie. I am the pocket. And I told them, if you want to attack me for standing up for collective bargaining, for fair wages, for safe working conditions, for health care and retirement, you roll the damn dice. I'll take my chances on that.
You know, it's weird that if you're a member of organized labor, you really have no home anymore. Remember that Ford and the UAW and Chrysler, that's not Chrysler, it's, what is it, Solaris now, or I don't even know what the name of the company is. The Stedmans, or I don't even know what do you call it? That is the Ford that is that was Chrysler, that was Dodge. They don't even call it Dodge anymore. They call it Ram. If you're a union member, why would you believe the Bidens? They've sold out to the Chinese. They've sold out to EVs. And Minnesota Waltz, what does he know? Minnesota Waltz is, if you're a member of organized labor today, you're an endangered species. You're an endangered species when you take a look at this. And it's because of the government. They want to switch everything to EVs. We all know that EVs are not the answer. They may be for some, but they're not for others. Certainly when we're getting, we've turned our great manufacturing facilities into assembly centers under Joseph Biden.
8 years ago, how many times you hear about we can no longer be the manufacturing capital of the world? Where the hell is that written? We are the greatest manufacturing county in the world, state in the world, city in the world. We're going to remain that way. I'll tell you.
Yeah, but the little factoid he doesn't tell you about is at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. 2 words for this.
Thanks, Obama.
Barack Obama, and we could throw in Bill Clinton as well, and George Bush with NAFTA and GATT and everything else. These were the people that decided that America could not manufacture. If you have been with us through the Obama years, and that's where we were put here in Idaho to take on Obama. And we took on Obama, and we talked about Obama, and we talked about NAFTA, we talked about GATT, we talked about how they offshored everything. Everything, all of our jobs, all of our manufacturing jobs to other countries. Westinghouse. Remember where we would get taxed during the Obama years, and Westinghouse, General Electric, and everyone else did not get taxed to the same degree. Because Obama gave corporate subsidies to all the manufacturers that would go to China. If you moved to China, you were great. If you stayed in this country, you were a dope. And here we have Joe Biden saying, we're going to talk about bringing manufacturing back. Joe, you guys were responsible for this. And if it hadn't been for the pandemic and Tucker Carlson saying they own all of our prescription drugs. In the old days, we had something called the Marshall Plan, where we rebuilt Europe. In the old days, we had the Eisenhower Interstate Program based on the Autobahn in Germany. We did great things. We are a people of great heritage. Why have we not brought back our pharmaceutical manufacturing to this country? Why have we not brought back the ability to be self-sufficient? It's like a lot of us. I don't know about you, but I'll say this. I mean, how many of us think about maybe it's time to get a generator? If we watch Newsmax or Fox News, it's, 4 Patriots. They're going to give you a free solar panel and maybe some vittles if you, in fact, decide to get a generator. Mr. Schmelz, how are you?
I'm doing good, Kevin. What's up?
Not bad. Do you mind if I go off topic for a second?
Yeah, do whatever you got to do.
What if you had to pick the wildest, most insane independent wrestling promotion not known to man, what would it be? Because when you're in your off time, you watch the big shows, but you go to these like dungeon dreary places like the bingo halls. And I'm not saying this is a smack. I'm just saying it. I wish we had those around here. That's what you do to see these people perform.
Yeah, Mega Championship Wrestling in Northeast Ohio is a good one. Power Slam Pro Wrestling, also in Northeast Ohio, is a good one. They've got both have a pretty solid YouTube channel, so you can watch a lot of their stuff there. Those are probably ones that come to mind right off the top of my head. And there's also Old School Wrestling in Odessa, Texas, which is a prominent promotion too. So those are ones I'd put down.
I'm going to write that down. Mega and Old School, is that right?
And Power Slam.
Power Slam. Fair enough. And Old School. Appreciate that, as if we don't have enough to do. Like I said, back to the YouTube. Anyway, so we have the House Democrats sending a letter to the former President Trump saying whether or not he's on the take from the Egyptians.
Right. This comes from a DOJ investigation that was looking into whether or not former President Trump was involved in some type of bribery scheme with Egypt pretty much during his 2016 election. The accusation is that Egypt may have given him $10 million for his campaign, and there's some bank records that might show that there was some interesting timing in terms of when former President Trump deposited $10 million, and Egypt withdrew $10 million from an account. So the probe was kind of stopped back in 2017 or not 2017, but during the Trump administration when Bill Barr was the attorney general. So Democrats are kind of following up on this and trying to find out if, in fact, it happened or not.
Right. Of course, we didn't do that, how many years ago? We're going to do this right before the election.
Yeah, of course, the timing is definitely interesting here, and it certainly is kind of one of those things. Okay, well, certainly this is an attempt to get people to talk about this. And I think what's fascinating about it, too, is, maybe it counters a little bit of the Hunter Biden negative news coverage about President Biden and his family's overseas business deals. But also, it's hard to see anything really happening with this because the Democrats do not control the House.
No, the Democrats don't control the House, and that is why it's so important. Are people buzzing about the debate, or is it too early for that?
Definitely. Oh, yeah. We're getting ready. We're getting hyped, Debate season, RTCA dinner. It's next. Congress is back. We got government shutdown season. It's going to be a fun time to be alive.
Ryan, anything else you want to share with us today, brother?
I think we're good. That's a good question. Football season starts today. Go Ravens.
Ravens, and who you got tomorrow?
Tomorrow's Friday. Does Ole Miss play then?
No, it's the Eagles and somebody. The NFL's going all out, man.
Oh yeah, I forgot they are doing like a game every day now. So I don't know. I forget who they're playing. So my bad.
My bad too, because I can't tell you. Anyway, Ryan Schmelz, we appreciate you, brother.
Hey, thank you, Kevin. Have a great day.
You too. Our great friend Ryan Schmelz joining us. Coming up next, Tom Gresham of Gun Talk. Idaho, Tom Gresham, host of Gun Talk. Catch him live Sundays 12 to 3, and then the replay 6 to 9 on KIDO Talk Radio. Tom, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I was thinking of you because we were getting the reaction to this horrific school shooting, and I thought about, obviously, the victims and people that are worried about the safety. And then I thought about an industry that you've covered, and you're such a part of the gun industry, and how the gun industry and people that, want to protect themselves are going to be vilified, and how you all operate in that.
Well, I was thinking about this and thinking about what do we know, what do we don't know, what do we not know about the Georgia shooting. There are a lot of things we don't know. What we do know is that the FBI knew about this youngster, a year and a half ago. They were interviewing him. So, they knew there was a problem. Once again, it's like they keep saying, well, he was on our radar. Really? And you did nothing about it? Okay, we know that. What else do we know? We know that this was a gun-free zone, which never works. All school shootings are in gun-free zones, and yet the Kamala Harrises of the world want to push the concept of gun-free zones everywhere, making people more vulnerable. Another thing we know, Kevin, guess what? As soon as someone with a gun, a good guy with a gun showed up, the murders stopped. That's what always happens, and it doesn't matter if the good guy with a gun is a man or a woman or is wearing a uniform or not. When a good guy with a gun shows up, the murders stop once again.
Well, that is, and that's what we were talking about, Tom, when, and then this guy surrenders, and you're thinking, what goes on in the psychology of a 14-year-old who does this, and then when the people show up with the guns, he backs down?
I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and people say, well, why did it happen? How did it happen? What was in his mind? Here's where I've landed. I don't care. Don't care what twisted thing is going on inside of this sick puppy. All I know is I don't want him to kill kids. And you know what? We have not lost a child in a school fire in more than 50 years. Why is that? Because we take that seriously, and we design schools in a way so they don't burn. We could design schools and put the money into them so that we can stop this kind of stuff as well. But we don't have the willpower to do that. We also, in a whole bunch of states now, teachers and staff can carry guns, loaded guns, and guess what? There's not been one school shooting in any of the schools where the teachers and staff can legally carry guns. Not one.
And yet we have people that continue to try to disarm us. And not only that, Tom, but then you have the politicians wanting these assault weapon bans, as you said, that don't even know the facts of the case.
Well, sure. it doesn't take long for them to go to their usual happy place of we must ban guns, or we must have universal background checks, or we must have fill in the blank, a ban on magazines, none of which would have affected this. It's like they don't really even care what the event is or what the attack was. They just trot out their usual agenda of gun ban efforts and say, oh, goody, we'll get to pull this one out again. It's callous. They're dancing in the blood of innocent children. It is despicable. The reality is we have the ability to stop this. The other thing is there's a thing called the stopwatch of death, and all the police officers know exactly what I'm talking about here. It's a concept that was developed by a police officer, and the longer it goes on, the more people die. Simple as that. You look at Uvalde. They sat there for more than an hour, the police did, before they went in, and more people died. In this case, the police officer, went in quickly and stopped the shooting quickly. Imagine how much quicker it could be if a trained teacher or staff member who volunteers, not forced, volunteers, takes the training, had a gun in there, and could stop it even more quickly, more lives would be saved.
And Tom, we are seeing that in private schools and religious schools and other places and churches across the country.
Well, that's true, but also in public schools, and there are a number of states now. Utah has never had a school shooting because the teachers there can carry, and they've been able to do that for decades. You have Colorado and Ohio have a program called FASTER, where they train teachers and staff members. I mean, it's serious firearms training. You got to volunteer, nobody's being forced. I always love it. They say, well, you're going to make teachers carry guns. No one has ever, to my knowledge, proposed of making our teachers carry guns. It's always been on a voluntary basis. And when they get the training, they're very good at this, and they overcome all of these objections from people who know nothing about it.
Tom Grisham joining us, host of Gun Talk here on KIDO Talk Radio. So obviously you're getting ready for the show. You're talking to people. You have Gun Talk Media as well. You guys are always on this. What are you hearing from the public?
The public splits on this. You've got the hand-wringers who say, oh, my goodness, what can we do to prevent it? And, I mean, that's worthwhile, I guess, on the larger scale. I tend to work on a macro scale of what can I do to stop it? Not prevent it, but stop it. And if it starts to happen, can I do something? Am I trained up? Do I have what I need? Have I taken the classes? And so we actually offer a video television show, a digital show called First Person Offender, where we drop people into these kinds of situations and see what they do. Anybody that wants to take a look at that, it's on YouTube. It's called First Person Offender. You'll be amazed at what you can learn.
Well, again, the education is the key. Tom, how difficult is it to operate in the world that we live in as someone who is a champion of the Second Amendment, the right guaranteed by the Constitution these days?
Well, it's not really all that difficult once you decide that's the kind of person you want to be. And, Kevin, I think that's what people have to figure out, is look in the mirror and say, who do I want to be? Who am I going to be with this? Am I going to be that person who cowers in the corner and asks for mercy from someone who has no mercy? Or am I going to be the warrior, the man or the woman who says, not on my watch, you're not going to kill kids when I'm around. You're not going to kill people. You're not going to murder me. You're not going to rape me, and you're not going to kidnap me. I will take the steps it takes to learn to use the tool. Buying a gun is not nearly enough, not even close to enough. You've got to learn it. You've got to take classes. You've got to get trained in it. But then you decide, this is who I am going to be, and then that changes everything around you.
Tom Grisham joining us, Kevin Miller, KIDL Talk Radio. But I mean, as far as the videos, we were talking to some folks that have a gun operation, a gun store, and they said, Kevin, they treat the gun people on the social media like they do the pornographers and everything else. They really shadow ban the message. And obviously people like you and others are attacked on this. And I mean, how do you operate in that very congested area, sir?
That's an interesting point. Facebook and YouTube are shutting down videos and information about guns, lawful use of guns, serious use of guns. They are shadow banning, certainly, which is harder to document. But now they're just openly canceling entire YouTube channels. People who have 2 or 5 million followers, subscribers to their channel, they wake up one morning and it's just gone because Facebook or YouTube says, yeah, no, we're not allowing that anymore. And there's really no recourse. It's one of the reasons I'm hoping that Elon Musk will bring out competition to some of those because at least he believes in free speech.
Yeah, it is amazing when you think about this. So how do people like you operate in this world?
Well, we do what we can with the platforms, the Facebook and the YouTube. We also have our own channel and our own website. We make sure that we have a separate, we have guntalk.tv for our videos, and we put them everywhere else. But just in case they all get shut down, we have our own delivery mechanism. And, of course, as you know, with radio, this is the end run around the general media where they don't want our message out. It's what you do every day. It's what I do weekly is we deliver a message that they try to shut down, but they can't shut us down yet.
Well, and yeah, I feel that, Tom, every day. And that's why we proudly support Gun Talk and you. So back to what do you think is going to happen in Georgia right now? What will be the fallout of this, sir?
It will be a lot of the same, a lot of hand-wringing for a while. We have, of course, on the personal level, it is a tragedy for everyone involved, for the families there. It's horrific. But the blame goes to only one person. The blame goes to the person who was pulling the trigger, and possibly to the parents. We'll find out more about that, what was actually going on there. But there's no other blame, whether it's gun makers or politicians or people who were not there. Here's a little factoid for you. People are going to leap on the fact that he used a semi-automatic rifle. More people in this country are killed with fist and feet, murdered with fist and feet than they are with AR-15 rifles.
And yet that's always public enemy number one.
Well, it's because it's easy to demonize it, and that was the plan. We will first go after these ugly-looking guns, demonize them, make people think they're somehow machine guns, and they're not. And once we get those banned, we can say, well, that didn't work. We have to go a little bit further. And then that didn't work. We'll go ban some more. And then that didn't work. Guess what? Before you know it, they're all gone.
You're right about that. Tom, let me hit you with this one. When we take a look at the parents, and obviously you covered that case in Michigan, and you referenced the parents. And again, like I said, I'm just a goof, and you and I and your beautiful wife, we had a lovely lunch at Smoky Mountain, so I'm a goof, and you and me and Greg Ferreira and your wife. But coming from a goof, what do you make of the parents? And here's my goofy statement to you. If the FBI visits you, it's time to go buy a gun safe, is it not? And we don't know everything.
Well, I would just say even more than that. You need to keep your guns secure. And I understand the generational thing of, we had guns around the house when I was growing up, yada, yada, yada. Got it, understand it, lived it. At the same time, if you look at the mirror and you say, I'm a good, responsible person, if you are a responsible person, your guns must be secure. And what does that mean? If you have it on your person, it's secure. If you're not home, it needs to be a place where nobody else can get it, and that includes your kids. And I am sorry if people think that's some kind of infringement. I call that just being responsible, along the same lines of not leaving your keys in your car. I don't see a whole lot of difference.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And, my family, we had guns everywhere. And I can remember being older and, telling my parents when my brother's friends were over, go, hey, man, you got to put these up. But again, that was 20, 30 years ago.
Well, and that's a good point. It's that your kids may be great, but their friends may not be. In fact, they probably almost certainly are not. And, it's that old deal of, what could happen. We will guard against that. But there's another aspect of this is if you have a troubled kid, and this is what you alluded to, if you know for sure you have a very troubled kid, then you absolutely must secure your guns and put them away somewhere, somehow. They're going to do a lot of analysis on this, and we'll learn a lot more. But bottom line for me is like, okay, you got all these things that were going on there. For me, it's like, what can I personally do? And what I personally do is I keep training. I carry a gun every single day. Every day, when I put my pants on, I put a gun on. Why is that? It's not because I hoped I could use it. I hope I never have to use it. But I can't even imagine how it would feel to have something like this going on when I knew that I could have possibly done something about it. And that was the day I decided I would not take the tools, the safety gear that I carry with me every day.
Well, that's a great point. Tom Grisham joining us here on KIDO Talk Radio. Do you recommend that for women as well?
Well, yeah. Women actually face more threats than we do. Think about this. I mean, women understand inherently that they are more at risk. They generally are smaller. They are lighter. They are weaker. And they also are subject to sexual assault. I cannot imagine these days a woman not taking responsibility of her own body in terms of protecting herself.
Yeah. Tom Grisham joining us from Gun Talk. And catch him this Sunday, noon to 3, then the rerun at 6 to 9 on KIDO Talk Radio. Why do you like taking live calls, Tom?
Love the live calls. Love the calls from the Boise area these days because you never know what's going to come in. You never know what the conversation is going to be. And sometimes the questions that's being asked is not the real question that they want to address. And we dive down and we end up with some interesting things, some funny things, and sometimes find out, wow, you have an XYZ gun from way back when that your granddaddy had.
Yeah.
And I had a guy call in one time. He told me about his gun. When we finally figured out the value of it, his pistol was worth $115,000.
Wow, that's quite a find.
Yeah, it really was.
Tom, let's talk to, and this is one of the many cool things I love about your show. You talk to people like that are the gun manufacturers, whether they're big or small. How concerned are they about this upcoming election? And I know you've heard the term the Trump slump, but what's riding on this election?
Everything. Simple as that. It's like the gun makers, of course, they, like any other company, they're tracking sales and percentage points and all of that, but they know inherently that this election will make all the difference. And Kamala Harris wants to ban guns. She's always said she wants to ban guns. Tim Walz wants to ban guns. He's always said he wants to ban guns. And they will use the administrative state to do that. But I will tell you, for me, that's not even the issue. The issue comes down to very simple, judges and justices. It'll be the judges they put on the federal benches and the justices they put in the Supreme Court, and that's a 20 to 30-year impact, and that makes all the difference. And I don't care how Trump talks. I don't care how he tweets. I don't care about, he said this. I don't care. I simply don't care. He gave us 3 good justices on the Supreme Court. He will give us more, and I can look past everything else to get that, because that is what's going to be the offset to whatever Congress tries to do.
You've said that on your show several times. I love you for it. I go, man, I'm like listening to Gun Talk during the week. And that's such an important point that a lot of folks don't understand. I would agree with you. I think the most important issue when you have a president is who they appoint to the Supreme Court.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, that's, the question is going to be, are we going to live by laws? Are we going to let the administrative state take over? Like when ATF decides that a rubber band basically is a gun, or a piece of plastic that you put on your gun is a machine gun, which they did. After years and years and years of saying perfectly legal, it's all fine, then they said, oh, we changed our mind, and now if you own one, you're a felon, you can go to federal prison for 10 years. We put a stop to that with the Supreme Court using the justices that Trump put on, and they said, no, you're an agency. You're not Congress. You don't pass laws. And that's what we need out of our Supreme Court, is to be the offset for when Congress or the agencies, the administrative state, goes crazy.
Speaking of crazy, are you ever worried about the government coming to get you?
Me personally?
Yeah, I mean, you're out there. I mean, and again, you act very responsibly. You're a nice young man. And again, you have the best job ever. Before you were a broadcaster, you were a writer. So obviously you know how to think, sir. But I mean, you ever think of, hey, man, Tom's getting too big. Tom got to go.
Yeah, no, it goes across my brain fleetingly occasionally. The reality is there's nothing you can do about it. So I am very much of the mindset of don't worry about things you can't control. If the government decides it wants to come get you, it will come get you. There's nothing in the world you're going to do about that. So all you can do is try to put the information out, try to find the truth, try to help people be safe, teach them everything about guns and about safety and about fire extinguishers and about locks and lights and everything else, and try to live a safe life.
Tom Grisham joining us. One more fanboy question for you. You go back to your days with your dad and on ESPN and all the magazines, Guns and Ammo, all these things. An amazing run promoting hunting, fishing, and the Second Amendment, and to the early days of hunting and sporting fishing television, if you will.
Oh, yeah. I mean, way back to American Sportsman TV on ABC TV. I was helping with that way back. I mean, we're talking 60 years ago, and I've been writing professionally for 50 years. I actually been doing Gun Talk Radio coming up on 30 years in March. Unbelievable. And so, you know, who knows how much longer. I think I probably got another 30 years in me, though, Kevin.
I would say you have the energy, sir. You do. You do. Much more than old lumps here in Boise. Tom, anything else you would like to share with us today, sir? We appreciate you joining us on such short notice.
Absolutely. Well, tune in to Gun Talk this Sunday, but also as you're looking at these stories, remember, you got one group of people who wants to take your guns away. They use every opportunity they can to push that agenda, and to keep asking yourself, are the things that they are proposing, would they have done anything to change the school shooting? And the answer is always no. It was a gun-free zone, and it was an armed person, a good guy with a gun, who stopped it.
Tom Grisham, we will be tuned in Sunday, noon to 3. We're going to try and get away from all those Louisiana callers and get some more Idaho folks in. We're going to rally the troops.
That'd be great. I'd love to have people call in. We'll just chat it up.
Thank you, Tom. You have a great day.
You too.
Our great friend Tom Grisham, Gun Talk Media, and of course Sundays, noon to 3, and then 6 to 9 on the replay. 36 580 KIDO. Obviously, we'll continue on talking about this situation in Georgia, not the situation, the tragedy of 4 lives lost because somebody had access to weapons, somebody murdered people. Remember what you were doing at 14. Maybe you have kids that are 14. Are you kidding me? Another issue I want to bring up that the mainstream media will bring up wholeheartedly is an issue involving a Russian disinformation network. And this goes out to all of our friends that, you know, they love the platforms. And obviously, there are platforms that we're associated with, whether it's the Daily Caller, the Daily Wire, Red State, the Gem State Patriot, all sorts of things. But whether you're licensed by the Federal Communications Commission, as this station is, or you're one of those people that, have had a marvelous run and have created a platform, whether it's Outkick or, again, the Daily Caller or something else, there is a certain sense of responsibility. And just because somebody has a microphone and a huge audience doesn't necessarily mean that they should be trusted. And years ago, God rest his soul, if Liberal Steve is listening, Ed Schultz was booted from MSNBC, and then he went on this RT network. Well, I don't know if you've heard about this. And again, maybe you don't trust the Justice Department. Maybe you don't trust anything else. But there was a Russian state media organization called RT Television that employed a lot of people that were conservatives, a lot of people that were pro-Donald Trump, a lot of people that did a lot of things. And here you have people that hired American influencers and paid them a lot of money. Now, the Justice Department has said that these American influencers, you might know them, whether it's Benny Johnson or David Rubin or Tim Pool, were essentially useful idiots of the Russian government because they peddled the propaganda. Now, many people may know who Tim Pool is. He has a very popular show on YouTube. It makes you wonder when he says something like this.
They know it. But I don't know that it matters anymore. This is psychotic. Ukraine is the enemy of this country. Ukraine is our enemy, being funded by the Democrats. I will stress this again. One of the greatest enemies of our nation right now is Ukraine. They are expanding this war. Now, don't get me wrong, I know. You've got criminal elements of the U.S. government pushing them and guiding them and telling them what to do. Ukraine is now accused, a German warrant issued for blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline. triggering this conflict. Ukraine is the greatest threat to this nation and to the world. We should rescind all funding and financing, pull out all military support, and we should apologize to Russia.
There we have it. Tim Pool, again, a very successful podcaster. And you have to wonder, did he really not know that RT was an arm of the government of Russia? I knew that. That's why we never did anything with them. We had a chance to do something with them in D.C. We said, we'll piece out of that one. We will talk to our friend Subaru Jerry. Good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, Subaru Jerry.
Oh.
Hello, Subaru Jerry. Go ahead, please.
Oh, good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, sir.
Well, we're talking about this school shooting. RFK Jr. was absolutely correct. This country is sick to the core right now. It's not guns that do these things. It's gender dysphoria. It's bad parenting. It's multi-social media. I could go on and on. We had guns when I was in high school. This sort of thing didn't happen. In fact, kids brought them to school because they were going hunting afterwards. What's responsible for this stuff are the people that are promoting all this cultural rot. And while we're at it, let's not forget the 14-year-old girl who was attending her brother's baseball game somewhere in the Midwest. It may have been Indiana. And an MS-13 gang member came out from behind the dugout, went into the bleachers and stabbed her multiple times with his pocket knife. So while we're talking about taking the guns away, maybe we ought to throw that into the mix, too. How many people have criminally illegal aliens raped, murdered, and robbed thanks to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris?
And how many school shootings?
Yeah, well.
I mean, Subaru Jerry, you and I, people would say that we're long in the tooth. Okay? So we're long in the tooth, we're this, that, and the other, but what goes on in your mind as a person who grew up when America was America?
Well, I sent my kids to school dressed properly with manners and their own lunch. I didn't send them dressed up like a cat with a cat box, so when they had to go to the bathroom, they used that.
Yes. Nobody was sporting a tail in my day either.
Only at Halloween, maybe.
Yeah. No, look, yesterday I saw some goof dressed up as a kitty driving a motorcycle. I'm going, what the heck is this person?
Well, some thoughts come to mind, but I can't share them on the air.
I will tell you, those furries, I am not down with the furries. And I know we can't say corporal punishment anymore, but you want to cure the I can't even say it now, the furry problem, introduce them to the corporal punishment. Come here, kitty, kitty, kitty.
Yeah, or take them to the zoo and put them in the cage with a real kitty.
Yeah.
Hey, Kevin, why don't you see if you can get your hands on that manifesto of that Oklahoma shooter? Apparently, it's been published by Star.com or something like that.
Oh, you mean
on the news?
Right, the Nashville shooter, the Tennessee Star did it, yes.
Yeah, okay. I think it'd be a good thing to get that out there.
Well, it would seem like it at the time, yes. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, but that would be something.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. I got to go to work.
All right. Don't tell anybody you're calling on the job.
No, I'm just getting ready to check in.
Okay. Bye. Cindy in Eagle with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Kevin. First, let me quickly apologize. I talked too long the other day and went right to your break. So I'm sorry.
No worries.
Okay. I had a comment. I agreed with everything that your previous guest said about guns and gun control and our problems. I'm in a situation where I'm a widow. I know I can't handle a gun. My husband had guns, but I had to get rid of all of them, simply because I'm not physically strong enough to pull the trigger, and to keep it locked up, and then if I would panic. So I don't know why more people are not talking about getting the Byrna. It's not even called a gun; it's called a Byrna launcher. I think one of the reasons is it's advertised on all the conservative stations. But I bought one. It's light. It's like a little squirt gun. I keep it loaded, and you don't need a permit. You can take it anywhere. You don't require a permit in 50 states.
Oh, is that the gun that Sean Hannity talks about?
Yes. And you can do it. You can do the whole thing through the mail. It's like ordering a pair of jeans. And I tested it out with my nephew, who is really gun savvy. It's very easy to shoot. And I don't understand why they don't recommend this for the teachers, because even if a child got a hold of this gun, he couldn't kill anybody. That's the beauty of it. And I wouldn't want to kill anybody, but if somebody's threatening me, I want to stop them. And you can stop them dead in their tracks, and it shoots 60 feet. You don't have to be a good shot. You have 6 chances to shoot the thing. And I feel quite safe with it now. And I just think it should get more publicity for those people, especially women, especially small women, who can't really handle a gun. And I looked into all of this, and I said, well, you can go to the shooting range, people will teach you how to shoot. That wouldn't work for me. It's I'm just too feeble, too scatterbrained. This, you grab it, you shoot it. And I'm safe in the knowledge that I can't really kill anybody, but I could sure stop some creep if he was coming to harm me. Anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Well, thank you, Cindy, and maybe someone will go out and get one of those. What do they call those things? The Viper, the this, the that?
It's the Byrna, B-Y-R-N-A.
The Burner.
Byrna.com, not burner. That's what Sean Hannity calls them. But it's the Byrna.com, and they'll tell you everything you need to know.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Take care.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Earlier with his reaction, and we'll take your reaction more to this tragic school shooting in Georgia. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And for years, we had folks on talking about the Western lands and what the Western lands need to do and how we need to stop what's going on and this craziness. But has this been the worst year ever in modern history? So now we have more smoke into the Treasure Valley. And a lot of people say, well, Kevin Miller, welcome to our world in Coeur d'Alene, in McCall, where it's just so bad. And then I think to myself, whatever happened to that song by Twisted Sister? We're not going to take it. But, all we seem to do is take it. All we seem to do is to take it again and again and again. At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And you think to yourself, the world that we live in, the world where anyone you don't even have to go to any type of official training. If you have access to a computer or to a library, in the old days, you used to have a library card. Now it's a laptop. And you can go somewhere and get a glass of water at Starbucks or, the old Big City Coffee. God rest them. We love them. And you can educate yourself. And yet here we have the idea that this presidential race is a toss-up. Let me just share with you, thankfully, Idaho is not California. Idaho is not Washington. Idaho is not Oregon. It's not Eugene. Although the mayor of Boise, she'd like it to be Eugene. How can you vote for this person?
I'm going to get into some business now. Okay.
And now it's back.
You all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024.
We're going to beat him in November.
Well, what are you going to do about it?
We all know you don't talk like that. You've been vice president for 4 years.
He does not walk it like he talks it.
She doesn't talk like this.
When we get this done together, my friend.
I know how to talk to you. I mean, come on.
Well, I see people testifying. Can I get a witness?
And they know. We all know she's just a big walking bag of artifice.
You think you just fell out of a coconut?
A walking bag of artifice. That, of course, Megyn Kelly on KIDO Talk Radio.
Tree, best rapper alive, Tupac. Are you kidding me? I'm totally part of that whole listening generation of music.
She seems to come forth with some sort of an accent while she's talking to French scientists.
We campaign with the plan. Uppercase T, uppercase P, the plan. We're expected to defend the plan.
What was that?
But that was weird.
Oh, the possibilities are immense. Whatever you want to do, you can do. I eat no for breakfast. Young men of color, black men, it's not just a barbershop.
You know Kamala Harris is Indian, right?
We got these brothers out there. This one brother who's doing a lot of work on space.
You are Indian.
Yes. My chitti is here. I was just talking with my chitti about this. Go to India for Diwali. We have to stay woke. Let's get a ceasefire. There must be an immediate ceasefire. Like, everybody needs to be woke. Just
More on the joke that is the woke that is the vice president. Good morning, Jim and Eagle. You're on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller. Thank you for the call.
Yeah, good morning, Kevin. A couple of things. Maybe there's an online presidency training course that Kamala has taken. Same one for the Secret Service has taken. They were talking about Trump may have taken $1 million or whatever the number was here from Egypt, or he didn't take it, but it was given. And they have bank records and this and that. And was it last week, I believe, they Republican congressional investigation has the bank records that Biden has taken like $27 million from foreign governments over the last 10 years while he was in office, and that story got killed pretty quick. So, it's just amazing that back to Kamala for a minute. Nobody cares that she doesn't
do in a minute, and obviously we'll talk about how you can protect yourself and keeping Idaho safe. Attorney General, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm okay, and we always want to talk to you about the state of the republic as someone who has served at the state level, the congressional level, the party level, and now back again at the state level. How do you see the state of civil liberties in our country today, sir?
Well, it's difficult to see. The Biden administration continues to take away our liberties. We see what's happening nationally, what's happening internationally. Actually, on the way in, I was just listening to a podcast about how authoritarian countries continue to take away people's rights. Freedom of speech is in jeopardy all throughout the United States, where people are trying to tell each other what they can and they cannot say. And it's always good to know that we live in Idaho and that we enjoy freedoms, and that, that's why you have so many people moving from so many states coming to our state, because they know and they need the freedoms that we have here in Idaho. We need to keep protecting them.
What's it like for you both personally and professionally as someone who you are still in the national arena fighting for the rights, fighting to make sure that kids have a level playing field, that we're talking about bathrooms and everything else, and I know you can't talk about specific cases, but then, again, I still go back to you trying to hold Eric Holder accountable and him, ripping Idaho. And, do you ever look back and, just look at that perspective and how it aids you in your quest to make sure that people are safe, sir?
That's a funny thing. I have a funny story about that. So the exchange, and I don't know if every listener remembers that, but when I was a brand new congressman, Eric Holder came into Congress and he was testifying, and I was on the Judiciary Committee, and I just asked him about all the scandals. There were all these issues where the media kept saying that there were no scandals on the Obama administration. And I asked him about all the scandals that happened in his administration and what Eric Holder was doing and why no one was holding him accountable. And he just looked at me and said, well, I don't know how they do things in Idaho or wherever you're from. And that became kind of a meme before there were memes about, Idaho or wherever you're from. But about 2 years ago, I was at the airport, and I can't even remember what state it was. And Eric Holder was there, and I thought, there's no way he remembers me. And he looks up, he goes, "Hey, Congressman Labrador, how are you?" Okay. So obviously he remembered the exchange, and he was actually quite nice. I was a little bit surprised. But, my job has always been to hold people in power accountable. And I think I have only one duty as an elected official, and that's to keep my promises to the people that I serve. I did it when I was in the state legislature. I did it as a congressman, and I'm doing now as an attorney general. And I think the only thing we take with ourselves after we die is our integrity, and whether we have kept our word to the people that we love and to the people that we serve. And it's incredible to see, as Attorney General, I have tried to do that. I have done that every single day. And you see in the media and the establishment in Idaho, they don't like it because I'm holding powerful people to account. And they come after me, and I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep fighting until the day I die, until the day I'm done with this office or any other office that I do. I'm going to keep the promises that I make. And I think that's why people support me. That's why people like what I do. But it sometimes gets a little tiring to get these accusations and all these different things that happen. But I'm loving the job, and it's such a tremendous honor to serve the people of Idaho.
Well, I think a lot of people don't understand that, working as an attorney and then everything else, and then you decide how the state is going to be represented, and very different perspective from your predecessor.
Very different. I said on the campaign trail that my job was going to be to represent the people, to let the people of Idaho know what their duties, their rights, and their responsibilities, but more importantly, to let the bureaucracy know what the law was. The prior Attorney General thought that his job was to legally justify the bureaucracy. I don't think that's what the statutes say. I don't think that's what the Constitution says. And definitely it's not my duty. My oath of office is to the Constitution and to the laws of the state of Idaho and the Constitution and the laws of the United States. So I see my job as making sure that the agencies and the departments in the state of Idaho understand what the limitations of their power are, not to encourage them to take on more power. And some people in government don't like that. Right. Because they have been used to doing whatever they want, to ignoring the law, to saying, hey, we don't care what the legislature said. And I have said, no, the legislature passed a law, and you have to pass and you have to follow that law. It's just really simple. You can't just get around the law just because you don't like what the legislature did. And honestly, most of the people that I work with, I would say 95% of people that I work with understand that. But there's a small number of people that are very loud, and the media loves to talk about them, that did not like the fact that I told them, no, you can't do that. That's not what the law allows you to do.
A final thought before we get to break, and then we have our special guest on to talk about a topic that obviously everyone should be concerned about, sir. But you take a look at Biden, and you've known the president for quite some time. You, again, a founding member of the Freedom Caucus. Barack Obama, Eric Holder's favorite guy from the West. Does Joe Biden have a thing about Idaho? Because he seems to focus a lot of his attention of challenging us legally, sir.
So I don't know if it's Joe Biden, because I don't think Joe Biden knows what the heck's going on. So I don't think it has anything to do with Joe Biden. But the DOJ has a thing about Idaho, and what the thing that they have about Idaho is that you have a very conservative legislature, but you don't have the most conservative judiciary. So they know that in the federal courts, if they come to Idaho, the judges are not as conservative as the people in the state. So we pass very conservative laws, and they challenge those. And in the judiciary, they tend to win in some of those cases. But then we also have the Ninth Circuit that is very liberal. And so for them, it's like a perfect storm, right, where they have conservative legislation, but liberal judiciary, and they know that they can get some victories. In the past, the prior Attorney General would just say, hey, there's nothing I can do about it because we're in the Ninth Circuit. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to start challenging these things in the Supreme Court. And yes, we lose some cases, but most of the time we win. We have some great victories because we're going beyond what was being done before. We're actually doing things more aggressively, and we're even limiting the scope of some of the rulings that are coming out of the judiciary here in Idaho and the Ninth Circuit. But that requires a lot of creativity, a lot of smart attorneys, and a lot of aggressiveness in the way that we do our job, which is very different than how it was being done before.
More coming up with the Attorney General. Next, Kevin Miller.
Love it. I don't know that I can say it's my favorite job because I loved being a legislator. There was something fun about the legislative process and, the back and forth. Being a state legislator was for a long time my favorite job because I was a citizen legislator. I still had a regular job, and then I would spend 3 or 4 months in Boise working on legislative stuff, and then I would go back to the real world and practice law. But this has been a very enjoyable job. It's the most difficult job that I've done, but it's every day there's something new that happens, and what we're about to talk about is one of the things that I enjoy the most about the job.
Well, and we have a very special guest.
We do. So we have Nick Edwards, who's the commander of our ICAC unit in the state of Idaho, and ICAC is one of those things that not a lot of people understand, that the Attorney General's office deals with internet crimes against children. And I want him to explain a little bit what he does and what the unit does. And but it's probably the thing that I'm most proud of in the office, that we're saving children. We're actually, you hear politicians all the time that I'm doing it for the children, right?
Yes.
This is actually something that we get to do, that we're literally saving children almost on a daily basis, because we have a unit that's looking out for kids, looking out for these horrible, going after these horrible criminals that are perpetrating crimes against children. So I introduce you, Nick Edwards, and I want him to tell you.
I want you to conduct the interview if you don't mind.
Me? Oh, great.
Wait a minute. One of my favorite stories about you, sir, is you love the area so much that Meet the Press would actually do the interview. So you're taking on David Gregory while you're at the Spirit of Boise Balloon Classic. So, I mean...
That was a fun one,
right.
Yes.
If you can handle Meet the Press, I think you can handle Nick here, sir.
All right, but I'm not a good interviewer.
Good morning.
Nick, great to have you with us. We talked earlier, and we thank the Attorney General for having you here. This is a topic that, like a school shooting, none of us want to talk about, but we have people that are going after, that are targeting kids in Idaho and across the country.
We do, absolutely. So, I'm the ICAC commander, the Internet Crimes Against Children commander. There are 61 Internet Crimes Against Children task forces across the country. We are one of 61. Some states have multiple task forces. Idaho has one. And inside that task force are law enforcement officers, both within the Attorney General's office and partners across the state of Idaho. So it's a good team.
Sure.
So, Nick, tell us a little bit about what you do. What exactly are Internet Crimes Against Children? And as you know, I tell you guys, do your job. I don't want to hear the details, because some of the stuff you do is pretty horrendous. The things that you see, the things that you have to deal with every single day. But can you please let everybody know?
Absolutely.
A little bit?
Yeah, so it might make a little sense understanding how we get our cases. And so nationally, what happens is internet providers, social media sites are all required by federal law to report to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. We call that NCMEC. They have to report if somebody is suspected of uploading, downloading, possessing, distributing, or enticing children or child pornography. And so those internet providers across the country are reporting to NCMEC. When they get those, they then send them to the appropriate state. And so at the Attorney General's office, we are the clearinghouse for all of those what we call cyber tips that come in. And then we filter those out to our investigators and to law enforcement partners across the state. We get, on average, in the state of Idaho, this may surprise you, we get roughly 60 to 70 cyber tips a week. And most of the cyber tips that we get in the Attorney General's office are a result of Snapchat, surprisingly. So they are, in Idaho, probably the #1 reporter of stuff that we get.
And without getting too graphic, what are some of the things that you're seeing?
So we do see a lot of sexual or child sexual abuse material. You know, both videos, images. We also see enticement, where suspects are trying to entice children online via chat, maybe Kik Messenger or some of these messaging apps that are out there, and those are a lot of what we get.
And how many arrests per week do you guys usually?
Great question.
Yeah.
We've seen great success this last 8 months. We've made a few changes within the task force. Right now, on average, we arrest 4 people a month. The understanding that these investigations are a bit complicated. They require a lot of paperwork in the form of search warrants, preservation letters for accounts, subpoenas, things like that. And then not to mention, there's a whole side of forensic investigating. We have, in the Attorney General's office, we have 3 full-time forensic investigators that help us get through some of those electronic devices and computers that we may seize in search warrants. So these are complicated, but that's a big raise from past years to date. We made an arrest yesterday here in the Boise Valley, but we, on average, or this year alone, we're up to 36 arrests this year, which is well over double what we did last year.
And Kevin, one of the first things I did when I came, because as you know, in my past life, I was a criminal defense lawyer.
Right.
I was kind of one of those anomalies where I was a conservative criminal defense lawyer. So I believe in the criminal defense system. I believe in making sure that you get the state to prove its case. But I also believe in law enforcement and believe in protecting the citizens of the state of Idaho. And one of the first things I did is I talked to people in the criminal defense, in the criminal unit, in criminal law unit, and I started realizing that we could do things better in that unit. So the first thing I did is I got a new criminal law chief in the office, and then we started talking about the ICAC unit and some of the changes that needed to be made. Because when I started as Attorney General, there was a 1,400 to 1,600 tip backlog. I mean, if you think about it, he says that we got 40 to 50 per week. We were behind about by 1,400 to 1,500 every single year, which means that there were 1,400 or 1,500 cases that were not being even looked at when in the Attorney General's office. So I said, how do we fix that? And I was told by the criminal law chief, Jeff Nye, that there was a way to do that. And one of the things he wanted to do is to make him Nick, the commander of that unit, and they said that they would have a way to fix that backlog. Well, he made him the commander, and within 6 months, we got rid of that backlog, and now we don't have a backlog. And I want you to explain a little bit what that means.
Yeah, so as we get these cyber tips from the National Center, what we did is we brought on 3 full-time analysts, and these 3 ladies, they look at every single cyber tip that we get from the National Center. They review every single one of them, and they do that on a daily basis. These cyber tips come in every day. They review them to make sure, one, that if in fact they believe a crime was committed, they then assign it out to an investigator, or if there's just not enough information in the actual cyber tip, they close it. We close about half of the stuff that we get. The other half gets assigned out to an investigator. And I think it's important to also recognize we've leaned heavily into our partners around the state. We've got great relationships with almost all of the police departments and sheriff's offices across the state. These affiliates, we have 10 full-time affiliates, 3 over in East Idaho, 1 down in the Twin Falls area with Rupert PD, here in Boise, and then even up north with Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, Lewiston, or Moscow. So we've got great partners, and then all of the other agencies as well that are also helping when we have these cases. I think they all recognize this as a priority.
As it should be. So, Nick, with the Attorney General's permission here on KIDO Talk Radio, what would you say to parents, A, to help them keep their kids safe, and B, the ones that say, this can't happen to my kid?
Be involved. Be involved as a parent. Understand what your kids are doing online. There's nothing more than this is a parenting issue in my mind. The dangers of being online. Online forums can be great. Social media sites can be great. They're great things, but be involved and know what your kids are doing.
Well, that's tough for us because, again, I don't want to date the Attorney General, but for someone like me, I mean, these kids are digital. Like, we grew up riding bikes or throwing a ball. These kids, they can do PowerPoint in the first grade.
Yeah. It's also educating, right? We have a lot of resources, both, the preventative part of parenting, teaching your children, having those conversations about what your children are doing online, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. And then if your child does make a mistake or do something or accesses something, then how to help on the back end. There's a number of resources out there with websites like Take It Down that can help parents remove content that might have been uploaded or distributed. So there's a number of resources. Part of the ICAC task force is also prevention, community outreach, and education. And we go around to schools all the time providing presentations on what to do online that's safe, what not to do online, and where that line is.
Yeah. What about your commitment and, again, rewiring this whole task force to make it more effective?
Well, the other thing we did is that we actually decided to start prosecuting cases internally. We used to investigate the cases and then send them to the local prosecutors. I actually assigned 2 full-time prosecutors to start prosecuting these cases. And that made an immediate impact on what we're doing. And one of the things that we have done several times, and obviously we can't talk about the specific cases, but several times we've actually been able to go in and save children that are being abused right now. Because a lot of these internet videos that you see, they're downloaded somewhere else or they're made somewhere else. And what you're catching is the person who's watching the video. But a couple of times, more than a couple of times, the unit has been able to realize that the child is being violated in the home of the person who's watching it, and they've been able to go in and actually save these children. And that's actually, nothing brings more satisfaction than that. When I got a call, when they said we got him and we got the child and we took the child out of the home, there's nothing more satisfying than that.
Final thoughts for both of you?
The ICAC task force, I'm fairly new to this role. I've been in this role 8 months. It is easily the most rewarding position I've been in law enforcement. I've been in law enforcement in Idaho for 20 years. I've been in narcotics. I've been a school resource officer. I've been in patrol. Being in the ICAC task force is super rewarding because the very thing is rescuing kids. It's great.
How do we get a hold of you if we have a problem?
So you Google search, there's obviously a link to the Attorney General's website, to the Idaho ICAC Task Force. You could Google search that as well. We've got a website, Facebook, Idaho ICAC Task Force.
Good.
Well, thanks for having us. I think this is such an important topic. And as a parent, as a grandparent, stay close to your kids. It's hard. I mean, I was not a perfect father. I was gone a lot when I was in Congress. And I see now, and I had children who didn't have the internet and didn't have phones. And then I had my younger kids had the phone, and you see how that affects them. So it's really important to stay close to your kids and do the best that you can. And I think something that I wish I would have known better as a father and now as a grandfather, I'm learning more. When your kids make a mistake, love them and try to help them walk through it. Don't be so judgmental. I may have been a little bit too judgmental sometimes.
Not you, sir. Not you or me. No, we're not judgmental at all, sir. Thank you both. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Conversation with the Attorney General, with Nick, on how to keep your kids safe. So be it. I got a text from Tea Party Bob. Kevin Miller, tell me about the sex toys on the supermarket shelves or something. Well, thank you, Tea Party Bob, for being the quote-unquote sex toys police. We appreciate that. Phone numbers, again, as we've given it to you. A lot going on here today. Obviously, your reaction to the school shooting in Georgia. What does it mean for everybody? Also, Donald Trump, President Trump, going toe-to-toe with Sean Hannity last night, getting ready for the big debate with Kamala Harris. Hard to believe that here you have Kamala Harris, who in fact is just, to quote a good old SNL skit, not so ready for prime time. And what do you mean by that, Kevin Miller? Not so ready for prime time when here we have at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, her hitting the heavy bag, getting ready to go to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and do all sorts of craziness with this debate. And, we've played a bunch of clips from her. We have shown you this, but it's the simple economics. You go to the grocery store, and for me, whether it's Diane or Steve at the Albertsons and Star, along with everybody else, when you go there and you talk to these folks, they live the same nightmare that we do. Or if it's, my son-in-law, Ryan, at Fred Meyer or anywhere else, where people just sit back and, they have to work more, and the people at the grocery store have to pay for the groceries. Legitimately, who in their right mind would ever vote for these people? Who in their right mind? That's something that we need to hear from you about. And that's what, in the end, that's why we're here. Almost 30 years ago, and I haven't made 30, I will tell you, I haven't made 30 years here. I've made 15 years here. I didn't even get a gold star. Sweet William, are you giving me a gold star? You're giving me a check next to my name like they used to do on the chalkboard?
Without voter.
Sweet William, Sweet, why are you pressing buttons here? We're trying to do a show. What's that? Nobody even knows what a chalkboard is. What, you want me to try to be relatable to the old people? Well, we are the old people. Where, you were sitting in class, you're going to explain this, you're being very disrespectful to the audience. So what he's trying to say is, how many times when you were a kid and maybe you had this antiquated thing called a chalkboard that they would put your name on it, and if you messed up, got a check mark next to it? Yeah, that is so unrelatable. Go back to your Palm Pilot, please. At 580-5436, 580-KID. We're talking about real serious issues. And don't go back to that you loved being the audio-visual assistant in middle school when they called it junior high. More on that in a minute. Kevin Miller. About wieners and sex toys and gosh knows what else. Oh, I know he is just mad at me right now hearing this. Let's go to Henry Rogers joining us from the Daily Caller. Mr. Rogers, thank you for joining us. Appreciate you, sir.
Hey, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
No, well, when we take a look at the Daily Caller, you guys are out there fighting the good fight. For people that are unfamiliar with the Caller, can you share with us why they should check it out?
We've been around for over a decade now, and we've been breaking amazing news, following around the Trump campaign, following everyone, exposing the left, and I've been with them for about 8 years, and I would say we do the best original reporting in conservative media, so definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, and, I was looking at your X feed, and there you are going one-on-one with President Trump. What was that like, as being like a normal human and talking to the most famous man on planet Earth, sir?
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of flying with President Trump many times on his plane, and having McDonald's with him up there in the sky, and watching his massive TV and all of that. It's honestly quite incredible. But the one thing I will say about flying with Trump is you always think of him as someone who as the most famous person in the world. But when you sit down with him one-on-one, he's really just such a nice, common, just great guy, down-to-earth guy who treats you with respect, asks you questions about yourself. And it's just kind of interesting when you sit down with him, because he's so curious about your thoughts and the people's thoughts. So I think the media doesn't do a good job telling that story.
Henry Rogers, Chief National Correspondent, Daily Caller. One more fanboy question. Does the Quarter Pounder just taste better with President Trump?
I actually made a tweet about it the other day. I actually think McDonald's tastes 100 times better on Trump Force One, and I'm a big McDonald's guy. I try to, my wife tries to not get me to eat as much of it as I like to, but I will say that the food 100% tastes better, especially McDonald's up on Trump Force One, 40,000 feet in the sky. So it's pretty incredible.
Well, Mr. Rogers, let's talk about your exclusive concerning the media and what the president's son, Don Jr., has to say.
Well, yeah, I think that he's absolutely right. I was talking to him about, how well J.D. Vance is doing. He was a big backer of J.D. Vance behind the scenes for the vice president choice. for Trump. And, I was just trying to get his take on that. And when we were on the phone yesterday, he mentioned to me the fact that, the Waltz family is not really getting the Mary Trump treatment. Mary Trump is the former president's niece, who, would go on TV and slander the president and their family and act like, and the media would act like she knew everything and that she was always around the family and was well connected. But, on the phone yesterday, Trump Jr. told me that he actually had not seen her in over 25 years. And the first time he saw her was for about, an hour at the White House while his father was president. And it was a very brief interaction, but, essentially his point was she has no idea what's going on with their family dynamic or what's going on in their family. But for some reason, the media is eating it up like she does, like she has a clue. Meanwhile, I don't know if if you guys have seen this. Meanwhile, you have Waltz's brother and 8 members at least of his family who have now, gone on record and, put out photos or whatever of the fact that they're, endorsing President Trump. And the media is completely silent about that. But, I mean, that's kind of a big story that, Waltz's own brothers advising to the American people to not vote for his own brother. That's stuff that if this narrative was flipped, it would be so much different. This would be, front page news to these crazy liberals. So, honestly, I agree with Trump Jr. on that. I think it's an interesting point. And I do think it's very, very telling that the media is not covering the fact that Tim Waltz's brother and family has flipped on him.
Well, Mr. Rogers, it's odd when and I don't even know if odd is the correct description, when Walz lied about being a command sergeant major, lied about going to Afghanistan, and Dana Bash just gave him a pass on that. I don't think that Jim Acosta would do that to the former president, sir.
No, it's been absolutely ridiculous to see the way that he's been covered. Honestly, the guy's a freak, and everyone needs to be talking about his background, his weird obsession with China. He's a really, really bizarre guy. His terrible COVID policies that destroyed the state. It's almost like they didn't vet the guy. It's almost like there was no vetting process that went on when they were scrambling to find Harris's VP nominee. It's almost like it's what happened, because there's been so much dirt that's come out on this guy now that it's like, how could you have picked him? There was definitely someone else that could have been a better choice. There had to have been. So, yeah, I think that more will come out about Walz. I think that it'll be interesting to see him debate Vance. I think that Trump will destroy Kamala in this debate anytime that she gets off script, doesn't have notes, doesn't have something to read off of. It's a disaster, no matter how soft the questions are. So I think that the honeymoon stage is probably over for them at this point. The media coverage will obviously still always be rigged in their favor, but I think that, the more they get off script, the worse it'll be for them.
Mr. Rogers, final question here for everybody here in Idaho on KIDO Talk Radio. How do you guys function? Because the media wants to zap you guys, and again, over a decade of the Daily Caller, and people are lumping your great organization in with other people, and some people say a lot of crazy things, and we're all lumped into the vast right-wing conspiracy. But commercially, how big of a challenge is it for a conservative operation to thrive?
I mean, it's tough. I mean, you have a target on your back at all times, and that's just how it is and how it's always going to be. It's something that I really what you have to do is what I tell people is you just have to stop caring, because these people who write these articles, these hit pieces on us or me or whoever, they don't matter. They're unimportant losers who are cooped up in their apartments in some depressing city. Eating DoorDash, and they're honestly just miserable people, childless, unmarried, miserable people who hate us. And what I always try to do is just completely ignore them and laugh at them, and that's what I'm going to continue to do, because all the other stuff doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Mr. Rogers, anything else that we should be looking out for? We appreciate you joining us, and again, these technical things happen, so we appreciate the content.
No, I appreciate you guys for having me on. I would just say stay tuned on the dailycaller.com. We always have a lot of good stuff coming, and I'll be posting an article later today for more from my conversation with Donald Trump Jr. Last night. So there's going to be another good article out later tonight on thedailycaller.com. So stay tuned for that, guys.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys. Always appreciate it.
All right, there we have it. Henry Rogers joining us. I mean, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, I don't know if there's any way that we could really top that. I mean, we could go to the distinguished gentleman from New Meadows, Idaho, and I'm sure that he would say this.
You really just pushed the right button, my friend.
Tea Party Bob, thank you for calling, and thank you for listening to KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller.
You know, you're on my list of the 5 friends I have, but very slowly but surely, that's moving further and further away if you keep this up. You realize that?
Well, I was just replaying what you said to me. You were talking about sex toys, and then I don't know if it was reference to Anthony Weiner or something like that.
Message.
I don't know if that was in reference to Anthony Weiner or what, but
no, it wasn't. It was in reference to child abuse. Anyway.
Well, you might want to clarify. But in fairness to you, you might want to clarify the comments, because this is a concern that Tess has brought up, that we have sex toys that are being sold in department stores, according to her.
Well, I'll tell you what. I just sent a portfolio out to one of our state representatives who has some pull in Idaho. You would not believe what's in this folder. I mean, you just would not believe the toys and things that are out there that are accessible, and nobody seems to want to do anything about it. And I think it's disgusting. It has to change, and I'm glad Labrador is doing something about it, because nobody else seems to care. And I mean even our legislators. Would you mind if I made a short public announcement, since you have quite a number of listeners in the land of the free and the home of no traffic congestion?
Do I have a choice?
No. You know, for people of Adams and Washington counties, there will be a public meeting 6 p.m. on September 9th at the American Legion Hall, 2046 Highway 95 in Council, Idaho, to inform voters about Proposition 1, which deals with ranked choice voting. Thank you for my time for that. Just a few things that are important this morning that I care to talk about.
Wait a minute. But wait, there's more?
Yes, there's more. There's always more. Always more.
Okay.
You know, I'm on a roll here.
Yes.
You know, it appears... you got to keep interrupting me. I can see it's coming. You know, it appears the liberal media is going full bore and promoting Kamala, but as they used to say, where's the beef? Everything that she has proposed is either taken from Donald Trump or so far off the economic map. If she's elected, you can bet we will end up, as Trump says, in a disastrous depression, much like 1929. And I do agree with that. You know, it appears that everything hinges on this debate. And if she performs like she did in her interview with CNN, you can bet that would be the final step for her fall from favor. Like I have been saying, the people that are attending her rallies and saying they will vote for her are very low information voters. And the odds of Trump winning have become more positive in betting circles. And we're learning that many of these new polls that are coming out have been skewed by sampling less Republicans to improve Kamala's numbers. You know, I don't think for a minute that the big chain companies aren't playing games like the Amazon little Alexa forte, giving reasons why you should vote for Kamala. You know, Amazon says it was an error that was fixed, but I doubt that it was an error. We are going to see a full court press in the next 2 months, so get ready for a bunch of new attacks on Trump. I do think it's funny that we have, once again, the Russia claims of election interference, where Russia is supposedly putting millions into conservative coffers for Trump, while Putin is endorsing Kamala. Personally, I think Putin is worried that Kamala will give cause for a nuclear war, and I don't blame him. And I want to thank Attorney General Labrador, and thank you for having him on this morning. He's doing one heck of a job and is making a difference, a real difference in the area of child abuse. All you have to do is read the number of arrests that his office has been responsible for in the past 2 years. Labrador is the real deal, and he has done more to protect the people of Idaho in the last 2 years than Wasden did in his last 20-year reign. And as far as the Georgia shooting, my bet is we're going to find out that this child is either mentally disturbed and possibly even on SSRIs, which I have talked about many, many times in the past. But you can bet that the Dems, once again, they're going to be out there to get the guns. Kevin, great show as usual. Great guest as usual.
Now, before you go, you usually send me a message, so we have that individual that's standing by.
You want me to send you a message?
Do you want to give a preview of who's coming up next?
Who's coming up next?
You know.
I do?
Well, I'll let it go then. You'll be surprised.
Now we're even.
Fair enough. Have a good one.
Take care, my friend.
Our great friend Tea Party Bob. Here he is, everybody. Everyone, he's apple pie.
Oh my, it's never going to end as long as there's a psychedelic drugs in the world and all kinds of weird media that children can watch and games they can play, and things are out of control, and you got an ex-president running around that just ought to be in a jail cell. You're going to have crazy things happen in this world, and there's nothing Tea Party Bob can do about it. Boy, he's about as loony as they come. Is he ever going to, is he ever going to stop politicking? Never. Does this guy ever take a breath? Jesus, Matty. Oofta. I tell you. And this debate, there's not going to be any debate. Trump's going to stand up there looking like a bumbling idiot. He doesn't have his teleprompter, doesn't have his notes. So he'll probably go off on some fantasy love affair he has with Nancy Pelosi. And Kamala will be giving him weird stares like, who is this guy and why am I debating him? He's not all here. I got to ask you one question.
People say the same about you.
What people? Name one.
Terry.